I'm Pallavi Mehta, and you're listening to the Extraordinary Women in Tech podcast, our EWiT Diamond Member Edition. This is a platform where you learn and you hear the stories and inspiring journeys of some very fabulous women leaders from the tech world. If you're listening to this conversation on a podcast platform, please remember to follow us. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. So welcome everyone. Today I have the pleasure of hosting Manju Abraham. She has been the VP of Engineering and led large engineering teams at organizations like Hewlett Packard Enterprise, NetApp, Delphix. So Manju, we're very happy to have you here. Thank you for joining us. And we would love to dive right in and hear about you.
Thank you, Pallavi, for having me, and thank you, EWiT, as well.
Absolutely.
About myself, like you said, I've been heading engineering organizations at companies like HPE, Delphix, and NetApp. More than 25 plus years of experience in the US working on enterprise products, building and scaling high-performing, diverse global R&D teams, then enterprise hardware and software products, operating systems, applications for business and mission critical solutions, both on-premise and multi-cloud SaaS products. Like you were asking earlier, before moving to the US, 27 years ago, actually, I was working in the Indian Space Research Organization as a rocket scientist. I was working on sensors and control systems for satellites and rockets. About myself and my journey, this is the path that I have taken. I did my engineering back home in India. I come from the southern state of India called Kerala. And so once, moving to the US was pivotal moment for me to move into from being a rocket scientist to working on enterprise products. And the opportunities, the joy of working in such environments here in Silicon Valley, that was a turning point for me. Other than that, my career path has been relatively straightforward and, like most Indian good girls, academically working really well there, excelling there, and then continuing to do that in the engineering path as well, right?
Yeah.
So, as an engineering leader in every company I worked in, I get to bring people from across the globe together to develop and deliver complex products and with high quality, on time, and within budget. And I also believe in continuous improvement, and I focus on organizational transformation and drive initiatives for improving developer productivity, efficiency, effectiveness, as well as bringing cultural alignment and accountability. So, to enable that kind of change and transformation in the way hundreds of people operate together, to influence across the teams and organizational lines, and to enable the teams to consistently do better for themselves and for the company, you have to inspire and motivate, right? And for that, set a compelling vision, set high expectations, communicate that clearly, empower them to innovate, provide support, and nurture that talent, and then to keep them engaged and resilient. That's my skill. It's
Oh,
about
you,
being consistent and authentic,
yeah.
leading by example, and building the trust and relationship and an inclusive transformational leadership style.
Sure. But Manju, you've put this so beautifully and so seamlessly and you make it sound so easy. But I'm very tempted to ask, especially for our listeners who are still early on in their careers, or probably new in management roles. I'm sure they're wondering that this all sounds so easy, but there has to be somebody who kind of guided you or led you on this path, right? Any nuggets on things that you did and you figured, okay, this is not working, I need to tweak it? Or, how did you evolve into this kind of a leader?
I think it started at home. My mother and father, both of them are rocket scientists too, and my mother happens to be the first woman rocket scientist in India.
Wow.
And so from her, I watched and learned about excellence and trying to be the best in everything that you do, persistence and hard work, right? So that I have continued to do in every walk of my life. And so that's an inspiration. And my father, from him, I watched and learned service to others, right? So he's an engineering leader as well as one who served the team, the community. And so I kind of bring both of those into my life. And I think I've grown up that way. And that has been, the grounding lessons that I've learned there. And, every role, you keep developing, right? It's time, varied experiences, exposure, all of that helps as an individual contributor to manager, to senior leader, to executive roles. So my ability to stay curious and to keep learning, that has helped me grow tremendously. And it's also, like I said, learning from experiences and then successes on what works, you want to keep repeating it. And from mistakes, we can learn from that, adjust, and then navigate as you learn to navigate through that. So another thing is observing others. You learn from the good, and then you definitely see quite a bit of bad, and you decide never to repeat that as well, right? If you look at my Gallup Strengths Finder, you must have heard of it. And if you haven't, all of you, please take that test. It gives you such a good understanding of who you are, your strengths, right? And if you look at my results, my top 5 strengths out of the 34 that they list are strategic, communication, activator, that means being action oriented, and then achiever, that's the stamina and the persistence part of it. And input, it's that craving for information, right? I think these probably help me to continue to learn and grow. And that's the most important thing in becoming a leader. You're not born a leader. You can be if you have the right traits, but then you have to continue to develop it. And that is where it's about human behavior, it's about relationships, and it's about how you behave in the community that you are leading. Right. So
Yeah.
if you think that you are in charge of people, you're in charge of taking care of them. That's the way I look at it. Everyone can develop technical skills. And our role, though, is to lead these brilliant engineers towards achieving that common goal. And I'm a student of human behavior. So I think when I look at what I continue to aim to be, I want to be a compassionate leader, right? That what that means is embodying the 7 C's, right? So there's clarity and candid communication, there's courage, collaboration, confidence, care, and connection. These are things that I continue to focus on. I think about it, I try to live that, right? And so along with building trust and relationships and living by my values, I focus also on that continuous improvement. That's what helps me make those changes. And above and beyond being an engineering leader, that's part of my life. I'm also a mother, and I volunteer my time to pay things forward and to give back to my community. I'm the proud mother of 2 daughters who teach me a lot about life, empathy, and inclusion. And I've learned much from them on how to care for those I'm responsible for, to handle each person as the unique individual he or she is, and to tap into their strengths to support that and to help them flourish, right? I think being a mother made me a better manager, and being a manager and a leader helped me become a better mother.
Yeah.
And I'm also the president of a charity nonprofit called Vanita, which helps me give back to the community and to those in need. And I'm in the board of a women's empowerment organization called The Club. And I'm passionate about DEI and champion the active dialogue on equality and equity to build that awareness. Right. I led the DEI Council with the CEO and members of his staff at Delphix, and I sponsored and launched ERGs for women, LGBTQ, and Black employees. And I've continued to influence those at HPE in my VP role and as an inclusion ambassador there. So these help me build my awareness and to be a better leader as I keep learning.
My Lord, Manju, that's so like it's so here are a few things that I'm hearing, okay? You had role models, awesome role models, both in your mom and in your dad, right from the beginning. You have a growth mindset where you're willing to learn from your mistakes and continue and learn from others, which is such a good point. And also that, you're willing to give back to the society, which also tells me that you're able to carve out time for all of these things.
Mhm.
Right. I mean, in today's world, most women are so engrossed in their career and their family that it's hard for them to look outside of that. But you've successfully managed to do that. So, a couple of questions on that.
I
One,
don't feel complete if I don't do that. I think for you to be a complete human being,
yeah,
it has to be, you are more a citizen of the world. And, the family is a subset of that. Unless each one of us believe in investing ourselves and trying to make the world a better place, we are not doing our job. That's the way I believe.
That's also vision, right? When you're willing to look at the bigger picture and bigger picture of life, right? Like my life is not necessarily just my work and my family. My life is what I do for the world too. So that's such
Mhm.
a nice thought process. But I'm very curious again, like, throughout all of this that you do, whether it's, leading your teams, whether it's balancing your work life, there must have been challenges. So can you first tell me about, any particular challenges that have come to your mind, on top of your mind, where you feel like, okay, that was a challenge. This is how I overcame it.
Different types of challenges.
Yeah.
I can talk about, one of the major challenges when the kids were younger, it is work-life balance. And then, like, I want to do all of these things, and I want to contribute in every area. How do you balance that as you continue forward? Even if now I'm an empty nester, but still, the challenges across each of those balancing it is a problem. And like I said, organizational transformation, that's what I enjoy doing. It comes with its own challenges also in changing people's mind. It's about change, which is very hard. If I talk about work-life balance, it is like walking a tightrope, especially for women, right? But it's all about striking that balance. On Mother's Day, I wrote a LinkedIn article on the topic of mom guilt. Man, I face that tremendously, especially being away from home. You're alone here with your husband and taking care of children. You don't have a support system. Your family is far away. It's a strange land as well, and you have to learn to do all of that. So it is about finding and maintaining that emotional balance. That's what I've recognized and learned, right? It can feel overwhelming and unfair to both the kids and to you, especially when they're growing up and falling sick, and you have all of those duties to play, to keep those two-legged animals alive. And but at the same time, I don't know if it's more about growing up India. We strive for perfection in
Yeah.
both of those worlds, right? And more so across all of the worlds that we are in. But the reality of our humanity inevitably reminds us that we cannot be everything to everyone at all times.
Yeah.
So my ambition is to do all of that, but may not be at all times
Mhm.
equally well, right? So that internal battle, that's the essence of mom guilt, and emotional tug of war experienced by most, working mothers, I would say. And it stems also from that deeply ingrained beliefs and expectations, internal and external. Many of it we put on ourselves, but then the rest from society, from family, and the conditioning that we've had, right? So I believe that work and life are more integrated than balanced. Our parents used to say 50-50. I don't think so. I can't just leave work in the office. That I've never been able to do that. What
Mhm.
you do, what you go through at work, the emotions from that, you're sure to take some of that home to your family and vice versa. And when the kids are sick, it may be 80% of at home and 20% at work, right? From an investment standpoint. And much of the other time, because challenges will keep coming up at work, 2080 also. And so there is no success without sacrifice. We have to acknowledge that. And then we have to be good with that as well. And you have to find a place, an organization which is okay with that balance and supports you. I was very lucky in Silicon Valley in the US. I've always had that kind of supportive management, and the companies have provided that, like at HP when the kids were growing up, at NetApp, at Delphix, all of those, right? And with the kids, what we have to do is continue to lead by example. Like I explained what I saw with my mother, right? And it's interesting the relationships. Is it perfect in every way? No, but I watched and learned several things from her, and I also watched and learned what not to do too, right? And I made a lot of mistakes with the children because you try to repeat what you've seen and grown, and there's a lot of conditioning that you have to unlearn, I would
Mhm.
say, right?
Yeah.
So here, what I did, what my mother did, is to show the children the importance of pursuing your passions and goals, despite all of the challenges, by demonstrating that dedication and the commitment to your career. And that's important for me. It's important for my mother. It's understood. The kids understand that, and they see, hey, mom can do it, right? So they see that it's possible to balance work and family life, and that following your dreams is a valuable endeavor. I integrate those priorities. I had a few guiding principles and managed it together with my husband. I chose not to travel when the kids were in school, and I never missed their important events. Late, yes, for many of the events, but I was always there for them, right? And I work late or caught up at home, and with global teams to manage, I had long calls at home. Those were sacrifices, but we managed it together, including the kids as well, right? So let go of the expectations of perfection. This is real life. So instead, we prioritize, right? And you prioritize both work and at home, and then we have to talk about it to folks that are impacted. Right? It could be your teams, it could be your family. You have to communicate, make sure that we have that understanding and it's supported. And I also think about the 4Ds. We may do it naturally, but it's good to think about this when you're prioritizing. 4Ds, as in, what are the things I need to do? I have to do it myself. Do, what can I delegate? That's a second D. What can I do? What do I need to do? What can I delegate? What can I delay? And what can I drop? Right? So there's always things like that on both sides
Yeah,
that come up, right? And you have to build your support system and continue to seek help. So every one of the things that you don't have to do do it yourself, or I don't enjoy cooking and things, housework, right? So delegate them. I struggle to do that because I worried that people would think of me as not having it all under control if you ask for help, right?
yeah,
But no, you get in control of things by focusing on the things that you actually want to do, right?
prioritize.
And
Yeah,
yeah, it takes a village. So build that village. That's what I
yes,
would say.
yeah,
And the other part that I keep hearing now, I didn't have that word when I was bringing up kids. It's about self care. And you have to think about it. What does that mean to you, right? What they say about putting your own oxygen mask before helping others. So self compassion and self care didn't have that, right? So find out what it is for yourself and then set your boundaries and decide who you want in your life and who it is that drains your energy. These take time and much introspection to understand that you have to understand yourself. So I had to learn that setting boundaries meant not just informing the others about what you expect, but more so changing my behavior when they cross the boundary, right? It could be your mother, it could be, it could be your closest friend as well, but you need to kind of figure that out, right? So I struggled with self-care because as an Indian mother, wife, and daughter in a new country, I held on to those conditioned behaviors. So husband, kids, family, friends, and then last of all, yourself. That's how we were taught, right? So it's after trying to balance career as well with all of these needing my attention. So we are taught, especially after once we are married, that you have to let go of your women friends in your priority list. Never do that.
yeah.
Spending time with my women tribe, laughing, sharing, all of that prepares me to go into my next week with renewed energy.
That's so
And
wonderfully said. That is because most of us, we do feel that some tug of guilt on spending any time, energy, effort on ourselves.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then giving back also has been so important for me. That gives me purpose and a way to focus on making a difference every day to make the world around me a better place as well. So be flexible and be open to adjusting your strategy and unlearning your conditioning and then relearning to get to that balance that works for you. It doesn't
Hmm.
have to be perfect, but that's okay, right? Else the barriers that block you are ones you are most of the time setting for yourself. Be aware of that. It took me time to understand that, but I did. And that's why I tell my listeners, people who talk to me, and my mentees and all about that. It's important to understand yourself.
Yeah, and also because you're a leader, people are watching. And in fact, just the other day, I was reading an article that said that women who don't take care of themselves raise daughters who also don't take care of themselves, right? So but moving on to, more on a work side with diversity and inclusion, which is such a big, focus area for you, and you've led programs in your organizations for those.
Hmm.
Do you have any practical tips on this has really worked and this does not work for diversity and inclusion?
Right. So it is, I think the most important thing is commitment and being intentional and
Mm,
keeping a sustained effort from all levels of the organization, right? Otherwise, it's very hard. There are many people who don't need to think about DEI at all,
Mm.
right? So all research has already proven that diversity is good for business, but diversity is probably the easiest part. To bring people from different backgrounds together, to hire them, form teams, all of that is easier. But retaining and supporting them, that is where we have to be even more intentional and consistent in
Mm.
creating and fostering that right environment to include and support them and to help them to feel that they belong. So,
Mm.
inclusion, it's about people's day to day behavior, right? It is about who we are. We don't remember that. Instead, there's all kinds of backlash on DEI, but it's about your behavior, how you deal with your colleagues. So, and we need to do better. We need to be better, right?
Mm.
So each individual has to think that way and see how they can make a difference. How do we get everyone to understand that and to commit to this? That's the hard part. For me, I am committed to DEI once I understood what it was, right? What does not feeling included feel like? Understanding that and understanding there are biases and there is discrimination. That is what that bad feeling that I had was, it changed my life in the way that I wanted to make a difference. I have two daughters. I wanted them to have a better life than me, and I wanted women around me to have a better life. I'm on the shoulders of stronger women, right? So I'm walking on the shoulders of my mother and that generation, and then I wanted to continue to get better in the next generation. So you asked about practical steps. I think a lot of steps are made very clear. But from theory, but how do you make it and get it into practice, right? So the first thing is, like I said, leadership commitment. So executives must demonstrate a genuine commitment, not just lip service, right? That happens a lot. That either because they don't know how to help or they don't care, but wish to appear to care, right? So it should be reflected in your words, your actions, your business decision making process in your business and in your day to day activities around work. And DEI should be in the core values of the company itself, right? And leaders have to prioritize diversity initiatives, make sure there are resources allocated to that, and hold themselves and others accountable for progress as well. Lead by example. And to do that, one of the first things you have to do if you are running an organization or a team is assess the current state, right? Work with HR to understand where you are. What does your demographic look like, and what are the policies, and what are the employee feedback to identify areas to improve. Listening is the most important thing in DI. So I hold listening sessions, for example, and it is very, very important to hear what people are going through. It's not just about the theory. It's about lived experiences that they're sharing, right? Listening sessions definitely help. And then the other part is about setting clear goals. Unless you set a goal, you're not working towards it, right? So you have to have those goals aligned with, the overall mission, of course. But then why is that needed here in every organization? You need to figure out how to put focus on recruitment. How do you retain? How do you promote? And how do you make sure that there's representation at all levels of the organization for minorities and women?
Yeah.
Right? So recruitment, we talked about that, and hiring practices. There's a lot of study. There are examples, things that have proven to be wrong in how biases come into play. Learn about it, understand it. And then you have to partner with diverse organizations and networks, the blind resume screening part of it, right? So there is AI that's available that helps you with that. And then, understanding unconscious bias. Unless you're aware of it, how do you change something that you're unconsciously doing, right? So you have to be curious and continue to learn that. There's a lot of training that's provided, but how much of it are people applying? How much of it are they thinking about? And so what that means is you have to keep that dialogue going and then to bring in the right practices. So you have to make sure that it is very clear to your managers, your hiring managers, and to the interviewing committee and all about diverse hiring, right? Then, like I said earlier, the harder part, inclusive work environments. And then, of course, the policies and practices as well, right? You have to create that environment. You have to lead by example. You have to call people out if there are, there's discrimination or any behavior that you don't consider to be right by those values. And, bring all of that into your discussion
Manju, have
forum
you
so that
ever,
the dialogue continues. Mhm.
so tell me this, have you ever had to call out something like this? And what was there a backlash you received? Were people open to?
I try to lead by setting an example, right? And when I see something that is not right, I ask questions to help make them think. That's the way I call that out and say, hey, why is there no women in this panel? You're talking about things that affect them. Or in during promotions, there are statements that come up about, well, yeah, the so some vague statements that come up. Oh, she didn't show this quality. So, okay, tell me more. Many a time they cannot articulate it. That is what indicates an unconscious bias, for example, right? In some other cases, they give examples, and then the question that I ask is, so what? How does that affect this particular role? Right? So
Mhm.
there are questions like that which you have to continue to ask. So the more you ask, the more you get people to think.
Mhm.
Many a time it's unconscious because they are not aware. They're not thinking about it. It doesn't affect them. Why should they think further, right? That's the hard part about DEI and its practices. That's what many a time training doesn't bring about. So that is where ERGs help,
Mhm.
right? For them to have those kinds of discussions. But then if the ERG is only about the people who are impacted, it doesn't help either, right? So you need to bring your allies and support system into that and make sure that you are enabling an environment to build those kinds of allies. And that helps. When people learn that this is what my colleague is going through, this is what their experience is, then it slowly starts to matter to them also. In
Mhm.
each of these, we also have to measure and track. From as an engineering leader and being very data driven, I believe in that. Unless we are looking at it and kind of tracking it. So I would look at, okay, how many interns did I hire? How many of those are women? Right, or minorities? How many new college grads? Or how does my pyramid look? And where are my leaders? And where are the women in each of those roles? Unless you bring representation, there isn't a chance for improvement either. And when you show women that they can do these, and when you show your leaders that they can be different and better, that is what continues to build things up. That's
Manju, do you also see, like, it seems like you, yes, I hear that you lead by example. You also subconsciously training or not, or somehow you're also training your people to think for themselves, right? So it's
yeah.
almost like you're mentoring them without them realizing that they are being mentored. But
No, so yeah,
yeah,
I think as a leader, one of the strategies that I've always had is, I ask a lot of questions, and uh, when I ask those questions, the team is going to always come back prepared for it. Soon it comes to a stage where I don't have to ask the question. They will already think about those. Oh, they know, okay, Manju's going to ask that and be prepared so I can then ask deeper questions, right?
mhm.
Similar thing here as well. When I show and indicate that this is important for me, for this organization, and this is why, even people who didn't think of it earlier, it'll become important for them. That's what leaders can do. That's how you can make a difference. As a VP of engineering, never, you know, I've been told that very rarely have they seen VPs from within engineering focusing on things like this as much because we don't even get brownie points for
Yeah,
putting in so much effort. But how else do you make a difference, right?
yeah.
So this is my effort, this is my way of making that difference, and I've seen the results. The voice of the workforce survey outcome sees that result. I've seen the shift in culture wherever I have been, and I'm proud of that and happy that the teams see the value and they tend to follow.
Okay. Tell me this, Manju, for mentoring, as a leader, you naturally mentor, right?
Hmm.
But for women who are still, again, starting their careers, building their
Hmm.
careers, uh, in the middle stages of their careers, how do you recommend they seek out the right mentors and what should they be looking for during mentorship?
Mentoring, see, I didn't have any mentors assigned per se, right? But you watch and learn. You reach out to people that seem open to provide you with guidance and then talk to them, ask them questions. Nowadays, there's a lot of opportunity for this. Most of the organizations that I have been in provided that kind of mentorship opportunities. Then we have women leaders coming up, speaking up about those, right? And then that is an opportunity to listen and learn. Otherwise, where do you get your exposure? How do you get to listen? So this discussion, for example, people listening to it can say, oh, this is how Manju has done it. Maybe I can pick up a few of these things and try to apply that in my life and the way I act as a manager. So this is definitely important. Seeking out mentors, if you have a good mentorship program, then actively engage in that. You yourself can be a mentor, and it's a mutual give and take, right? I gain something from being a mentor as well, and those are the relationships that will continue to sustain. Having the discussions, sharing experiences, sharing those stories, that is when I learned, that my stories actually add value. When women would come to me and ask more questions and say, hey, I want to be like you. So that's the biggest compliment, and that's this is your opportunity to give and pay it forward also. So I would say reach out and ask if there is a good fit, then continue to hold that relationship, right? I'm not saying that you should have this one mentor and be done with that. That's not how it works at all. There are mentors and could be sponsors that come out of the woodwork based on how you behave, how you show yourself, how you take initiative, and you want to be that reliable and dependable that you can have mentors and sponsors be proud of you and speak up on your behalf when you're not around, right? So it's about your behavior, how you reach out, how you continue to show your improvement, how you show your appreciation for what you've learned, because that feedback is good for me also. What helped that person? So that's valuable for me. So then I can continue to provide more and more of that.
Very nice. Manju, one question, that I always feel, they say that leaders are, there are two thoughts to this. Some people say leaders should be vulnerable,
Mhm,
right? While others
mhm,
say that leaders are people that others look up to, right? So
mhm,
they don't want to see vulnerability or weakness in a leader.
mhm, mhm.
Which which line of thought would you subscribe to?
I subscribe definitely to the former. Why else would I share my stories? Why? So, people, it, being a leader, it is a growth path and a journey. You didn't land up there on that spot and then something magically happened, right? You go through a journey which is not at all linear. You're learning along the way. If you share what you've learned, more of them will become such leaders. Otherwise, women watch and see, I take my role as a VP of engineering very seriously. It's because that kind of role modeling is important. When people see me, they see, oh, if Manju can do it, I can do it too. Like being vulnerable, sharing those stories, like I said earlier, shows them also that she went through those challenges and then still managed to get there. And this is how she performs. And she makes mistakes. Okay, even if I make a mistake, it doesn't mean that I'm lost forever, right? So you come up, you continue to learn from it and continue to grow. So talking about that, reiterating it, that's what is important. As a parent, what are you doing to your children? That is exactly what you need to do as a leader to those in your charge. You tell them, and that's where the communication and clarity comes into play. And I don't know. See, if leaders think that they cannot make mistakes or that they are perfect, that is the biggest mistake in itself. Nobody knows everything. Looking up to is doesn't mean that that person knows everything. It is the respect that is given to everybody around and your behavior that gets you, that people look up to. Many a time, I think that time is changing. Many of the people in senior leadership roles, I hope it is changing, I would say. See, leadership roles have this kind of alpha male, that kind of a behavior. And women to get there also probably had to behave that way. But those are the ones with the arrogance and the narcissism also probably that never listened to others and made bigger mistakes. Maybe they were bolder, right? But then through vulnerability comes an army with you where you're not alone as a leader either. So those are my experiences. And I can tell you another thing is I'm a cancer survivor.
Ah,
And I so when I look at what was the purpose? Everything that happens in life has to have a purpose. So that purpose must have been for me to develop that empathy and then to be able to help others. So I counsel other cancer patients. And I can tell you at HPE itself and outside of that also, there are a lot of women there that I counsel, and I continue to do that. And I'm what they call. So when I was diagnosed, I didn't know anybody
mm,
who had been through that. There
mm,
was no history in the family or any of that at all. And I went to organizations here like Bay Area Cancer Connect, and I connected with Immense Angels, and those kinds of nonprofits are the ones who supported me through that.
mm.
And that was amazing. And I definitely give it back, right? And so I'm what they call a mentor angel and kind of work through, and people connect me. And to be able to support and help carry forward somebody who's going through the toughest challenge in life,
Yeah,
that's a blessing that I feel.
yeah,
That's giving it forward. So you'd asked earlier about different challenges. I talked a little bit about being a mom, balancing life. This was one of the biggest challenges that I faced as well. But then the way I came through it, I learned so much about myself, the strength that I have, and that strength that I can continue to share with other people also.
yeah.
That's all part of life. That is, it makes you unique, it makes you strong, it makes you a giver, and you continue to grow.
That's
You
such a
come through
beautiful.
and thrive, when you come through that. Because I have my friends, they watched me and they said, Manju, if I ever fall sick, I want you to project manage that for me, right? So but it's the way you think, it's the way you carry yourself forward, it's the way you analyze the situation and handle that. If I can help others with that, I definitely will.
It's so inspiring, Manju, to hear that. See, all of us go through our own challenges and we feel like, oh, this is the worst phase of my life. You
Mhm.
don't realize till you look outside and you recognize people are going through life-threatening battles, right?
Yeah.
So
Every day,
sometimes,
everybody, right? So different levels and degrees of challenges. And when
mm,
you've been through that, and later on, there are many things that you have to remember through that. Yesterday, I was giving a panel talk and I was saying the same thing. It was about career transitions. And one of the things to remember is every one of those is temporary. We can later step back and think about, oh, I came through that, right? We forget it when you're going through it. Yeah, if you keep reminding yourself, it is a good thing. So that's very important. It is, or every challenge is temporary. We will come through it. So that's a positive reminder for ourselves. And then to take everything one day at a time, right?
yeah,
And to prioritize. There are many things that you learn from it to continue to build your resilience.
yes,
It is about resilience. And at work, for example, you always think about corporations, productivity, all of that stuff. But COVID proved to us that resilience in a team, in your employees, is equally or more important
yeah,
than any of the other things, right? So that is a personality trait, something to build in each one of them. And how do you do that? You create that environment, you support them, and you teach them and train them. And you show again, lead by example. I definitely talk about those.
mm,
But you have to feel safe to do that. And I think my leaders at that time showed that it was okay for me. Many of my peers said, oh, man, you don't talk about it. What else? So it is those folks with the mentality that, well, you cannot be vulnerable. Well, I was carried by that love and care
so
of that community.
yeah,
And I would never regret that. But I've also been with leaders where I would not feel safe to bring this up.
mm,
So never be that leader. Be the
mm,
leader that your people can depend on. When they are going through a crisis, when you take care of them, that is never forgotten.
that's true. Yeah, yeah, very, very profound, Manju. Okay, so we've got to know so much about you, which is very inspiring, eye-opening, also lovely to know. But in a nutshell, if you had to define what is your superpower, if
Mhm.
if you have to analyze yourself, what do you feel are a couple of things, superpower or superpowers that have carried you? Anything in a nutshell?
Superpowers, I think I did talk about what I do earlier, being able to bring people together
Mm,
to see their strengths, just like I talked about my own strengths, right? To see their strengths and to tap into that, and
mm,
then to bring those strengths together across different people that's unique.
mm.
That's when magic happens, right? So I'm very good at that.
They bring out the
And
best in people.
that I do, I think. Yeah. It is when you provide that kind of support,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. Yeah, and I think for us, like people who are leading big teams, for them, it's important to recognize that not every team member is the same, right? And
Hmm.
then you have to tap into what they're good at and
Hmm.
highlight that and balance the big team overall. Very
Yep.
nice. That's lovely, Manju. Manju, is there anything else that you'd like to, share on this forum? Any call for action, any recommendations for women who may be listening in?
So one of the things that you had asked me earlier was about, how do you increase women's representation in technology,
Mhm.
right? And how do we work towards that? I think first and foremost, it is important to have representation. It is
Mm,
such a hard reach for women to get to senior roles, not because of lack of capability, but those opportunities aren't given enough, right? Women
mm,
aren't considered in those roles enough. So give them the opportunity. Men are promoted for their potential, while women for their performance, for having proven themselves already on doing the job, right?
it-
How
it's
unfair
true.
is that? So,
Yeah, yeah,
society as a whole has to shift that mindset. So,
yeah.
we need to promote and enable more women in senior
Mm,
leadership roles before um, you know these careers die out in middle management roles itself, right? So that is why role models are very important. I take my role, as a VP of engineering very seriously because of that.
yeah.
It's important to me, not because of the title or any of that for myself, but it is because it gives me an opportunity to show other women that if I can do it, they can too, right? So that's the role modeling part of it, which is very important. Giving the opportunity is one step, but the next thing is not to leave them stranded without setting them up for success.
Mm,
Many a time women tend to give up because we've come through, see, I come from a very conservative and protected home, very protective parents and family, and wasn't even allowed to talk to boys or men outside of my own family, right? So, but then to come this far and to learn to speak out and to stand up for myself, to be bold, all of those, it still there is that what we grew up with. It's still there. So some amount of support in handling men and boys who may have in, be much more street smart and all of that, right? So there is some support system that would definitely be useful when you are playing in senior roles. So new leaders, even men, would need support, a sounding board or a mentor. So for women, we have to set them up for success
so
by providing them that, right?
yeah, so at EBIT we call that the sisterhood. And
Yes, exactly. That's why I wanted to call that out, right? We can talk about addressing gender bias stereotypes and, building awareness. We did that earlier about hiring, all of that, giving the opportunity, but once hired, giving them the environment, and promotion and advancement also, where if unconscious bias can be overcome, that's what we need to do. But then it is about building and encouraging a community of women who give unconditional support, and a community of allies. That
yes.
tribe is going
Mm,
to be so important. So I wanted to kind of close with that, right? Because I've seen senior older women where it was considered a zero sum game. In yesterday's panel discussion, that came up, right? Oh, the zero sum game, women are much harder. I've had the hardest bosses who are women. Well, don't be that woman. That's
yes.
what I would say. right?
Yeah.
And be the one that others depend on. Be the one that is showing true leadership, right? You can have that. Don't worry. If anything goes wrong, when you speak up and live by your values, that is okay. That is
Yeah.
not the place for you.
Yeah.
That's the way I've lived my life. And I think that leaves me with the best peace of mind and that sense of accomplishment and the confidence that I can continue to care for the team.
Yeah.
Live by your values and then provide that support. So, strong women can do that. So, let us support strong women and
Let's
build
build more
more up
strong
with that
women.
role modeling. Mhm.
Yes. Yeah, beautifully said, Manju. Thank you so much for your thoughts, for your stories, for your sharing your journey with us. We really appreciate your time. And to all our listeners, I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to share your comments and your suggestions with us on our platform. And if you have any recommendations of other strong women that you'd like us to include in this program, we'd love to have that too. So we look forward to hearing from all of you. Manju, thank you so much for your time again. And you have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you, Pallavi.
All right.